Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast where today we're going to be selecting our most disappointing Premier League 11 of the season, and there's only going to be one rule. You can only select one player per club. Toby, who did you go for in goal?
Yes, Mev, let's just jump straight into it and start with my goalkeeper. And I have gone with a man who I think is still one of the best keepers in the league. I think the team that he's playing for definitely haven't had a disappointing season per se, but I have gone for Emi Martinez of Aston Villa. I think he still produced some really good moments, some amazing saves on occasions. I just think his overall performances this season have seen a drop, especially compared to last season. And in the Premier League as a whole, statistically, he has actually been one of the worst performing goalkeepers, which I don't think I was expecting him to sort of be middle of the pack and that drop off from him sort of being in the top, but statistically, this drop has been really, really big. We're seeing him with a save percentage of only 65.9, which puts him 17th in the Premier League this season. And in terms of post-shot expected goals, plus or minus per 90, the biggest mouthful of a statistic going, where essentially what he should be keeping out from shots that he's facing, he's actually on a minus per game, a minus of 0.05, which puts him 15th in the league. So he is floating around that bottom five for both of those statistics there, which is why I've got him in my most disappointing 11.
And mate, this is why I love doing the podcast with you. We think so much alike because I have also gone for Emi Martinez in goal. I completely agree with you on everything you said there. But if you want a couple more stats, he's made 6 errors leading to an opposition having a shot this season. His most in any previous campaign was 3, so that's already double, and we're not even at the end of the season so far. He's also made 1 error which has directly led to a goal this season. And I think with Martinez, we probably don't expect him to be the most consistent goalkeeper over the course of a 38-game season. But we do expect him to be really good with the ball at his feet. We expect him to make worldy saves every now and again to get his side out of danger. And I just think by his own standards, he's probably dropped off a little bit this season from that. And so I think it is quite comfortably that he is probably the most disappointing goalkeeper this season, just because from what we've expected of him, his standards have dropped, and it's been quite noticeable actually. So I think, Emi Martinez is in goal for both of us, and that starts us off quite nicely. So in terms of the defenders, have you gone for a back four?
I have got a back four. Yeah, nice and easy. How about yourself?
Yeah, I have also gone for a back four. No funny formation this time round. So maybe let's start off with the left backs. And since you went first last time, I'll go first this time. And I've actually gone for my favourite player from my own club in my team, and that is Andy Robertson at Liverpool. He's played 31 matches so far this season, 27 starts, no goals, no assists. Has an average surface score rating of 6.83, which is actually really good. And I think his season as a whole, he's actually just been okay, a solid 6 out of a 10 player. But what I would say is, for a side in Liverpool who are top of the league, who have won the Premier League, to just be a 6 out of a 10, and in terms of being a consistent starter for the side, that probably does put you as one of the worst performers in that starting 11. And I think it's relative because I did expect a little bit more from him. If he's not got any goals or assists, then you probably expect him to be really good defensively, and he hasn't necessarily done that. He scored the own goal a couple of weeks ago at home at Anfield. He also got sent off in that home game against Fulham very early on, and he looked very clumsy making it. Thankfully, it didn't cost Liverpool the game as well, as they were able to get a draw out of it. But I just think that offensively he's not been great. Defensively, he's not been great, and for a side who's won the league, you probably expect the left back to be a little bit better and arguably be a contender for team of the season. He hasn't done it, and it is with a heavy heart that I've put him in my team of the season. Do you think that's potentially a little bit harsh?
No, he was in contention for my left back slot. I didn't end up going with him in the end, but I definitely agree in terms of I think with how well the rest of the Liverpool squad has been, he does stick out, unfortunately, and that's why we've got, again, this summer, same as last summer, why there's so many rumours about Liverpool upgrading that left back position and going for somebody like Milos Kerkez of Bournemouth. I didn't go for Robertson in the end because I didn't quite see his drop off from last season to this season being too drastic. I think it's been quite gradual, maybe over the last 2 or 3 seasons, where we've seen his attacking numbers drop. And again, like you said, that defensive side hasn't always been his strong suit. But I think when he was at his peak defensively, a lot of that was down to his work rate and his pace. And with that going, I think that's where we've seen that drop in the defensive attributes of Andy Robertson. So I definitely think it's a good shout. I just think maybe my expectations of him at the start of this season weren't particularly there for him to be too disappointing for me.
Yeah, I think you've all made very valid points there. I think for me, I think because I see him week in, week out, I'm in the Liverpool bubble. I think maybe
Yeah.
it's highlighted to me even more so than I think it probably would someone else, even though I think it pretty much universally agreed that Liverpool need a new left back going into next season, and they've put it up for as long as possible. So maybe because I've got him in the front of my mind, maybe I've gone for him. So if you haven't gone for Robertson, who have you gone for at left back?
Yeah, for left back, I've gone for a side that maybe I didn't have too much expectations for overall. And I think, again, have performed fairly well considering the difficulty that it is to come up from the Championship. And I have gone for Ipswich's Leif Davies at left back. Last season, he was absolutely exceptional. Arguably the best player in the Championship. 18 assists from left back in 43 games. And this season, I think with Ipswich's transition to the Premier League and the loss of the freedom that their fullbacks have had, that they need to sit back, they need to defend a lot deeper than they would have been when they were one of the high flyers in the Championship, has really seen a massive drop in what makes Leif Davies such a good player. He needs to be able to have that freedom to run forward, and this season only 2 assists in 30 games. He has not really had the opportunity to get up as much as he would have liked. And I think at the start of this season, we all saw him potentially as a nice, cheap FPL asset, somebody who can rack up some assists, maybe a new Andy Robertson in terms of FPL. But yeah, just hasn't really delivered maybe, and not as an exciting player as we would have hoped at the start of this season.
Yeah, I can see definitely where you're coming from there. I think me personally, I didn't have too much expectation because I don't think you really can with the newly promoted sides. I think to have expectation on any of the teams or the players is potentially putting yourself in a bit of a predicament. And I can understand really why. I mean, I think especially when you compare him to Alfie Doughty for Luton Town last season, the comparisons were there really. And, young, exciting left back who can really bomb up forward. And I think Doughty, to his credit, was doing so well for Luton that he ended up playing in more advanced roles like left midfield or right midfield at times as well. Whereas Leif Davis has stayed predominantly as a left back, but then has struggled massively as the whole side. So I can definitely see where you're coming from, although I don't necessarily agree. But I think the left back position, and I think the defenders as a whole were actually quite hard to do in this. Because I think forwards, their job is to score goals. They don't score goals, they're in the spotlight and under pressure. Whereas the defenders, it's a little bit harder. So I'm glad you put Leif Davis forward, because I didn't think of going for him because I thought not for me, but I can definitely see where you're coming from. Where do you want to go next from here? Do you want to go with the centre backs?
Yeah, let's move into centre backs. Shall I give you one of mine first?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, my first centre back, and this one I feel I can't say I was too disappointed. He was obviously signed in January last season, and I think he performed well enough. And I don't think there was really much expectation, but I just think his performances this year have been so bad, in my opinion, that I had to put him in, and that is Radan Dragashan of Tottenham. The Tottenham games I've watched this season where he has played, he was really poor, terrible decision making. On the ball, did not look good, did not have any of those attributes that I think why they signed him in the first place as that sort of Van de Ven cover, I think is why he was initially signed. And his on the ball stats, he's in the bottom 35% of sort of Europe's top 5 leagues in terms of touches and successful passes and progressive carries and things like that you expect a high level centre back to be able to do. And when he was playing alongside Archie Gray, the 18-year-old midfielder, he made Archie Gray look really good at centre back at times. He's just been so poor, and again, like I said, not that I had really much expectation for him, but I thought, okay, Tottenham have spent a decent bit of money on him as cover to Romero and Van de Ven when it's needed, which this season it really has, and the drop off from Romero and Van de Ven down to him has been so big for me that he had to go into this most disappointing 11.
I can definitely see where you're coming from. He was one of the centre backs under consideration for my team as well. I just thought to myself, though, with his injury, 16 Premier League matches he played this season, 12 in the cup competition this year for Spurs. I just didn't think he played enough of a prominent role for me. And also, if you're considering to be the backup, was he that disappointing? I'm not sure. But I think what's also interesting with this is you got to think about, just because they're in our disappointing 11 doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad player. Because if you put Dragasson, I think if you replace maybe Milinkovic at Nottingham Forest would drag us in. I don't think Nottingham Forest is good. That's not what I'm saying. I think though that the system that Spurs play just doesn't suit him whatsoever, and I still think he's a very good player. And so, by that logic, for me, I just don't think that necessarily you could. I didn't want to personally put him forward for the disappointing 11, even though I can completely understand why, because I think the system hampers him as much as anything else. And if you were to go down the side, I think he'd be absolutely fine. But I can see why you went for him. Let me mix things up for you a little bit. I also have another Spurs defender, but I have not gone for a centre back. So I'll talk about them now so we're on the same Spurs wavelength. I've gone for the right back, Pedro Porro of Spurs. Now, he's played 31 matches so far this season, 2 goals, 6 assists, so he's done okay. However, I think those attacking numbers have come from the fact that he's just been playing the Hollywood pass every single time. He's only got a successful pass completion rate of 74.9% this season, which puts him in the bottom 26 percentile of all fullbacks in Europe's top 5 leagues this season. So he's very, very poor at keeping the ball and retaining ball retention. And I think that's something which I've looked at him and I looked at Spurs in general, and I'm not sure quite if it's tactically and that's what Ange Postecoglou is instructing him to do, or if it's him taking on the individual responsibility. But he's been very poor at keeping the ball and uniting the play at Spurs, which has meant that the games have been end to end as a result. And sometimes I see him not only at right back, but also sometimes pressing high and wide at left wing. And I just think to myself that it's not quite working for me with Pedro Porro. And then also when you add into the fact that defensively, he's okay, but he's not the best defensively either. Only winning 0.5 aerial duels per 90, so not even one, just half an aerial duel. So 1 aerial duel per every 2 games. That's quite poor as well. And then finally, the fact that I think Jet Spence is actually a better fullback than him and actually shown it so far this season. I think he should be starting ahead of him at right back. And I just think Ange Postecoglou just prefers Pedro Porro, and that's why he's starting him. And he's trying to keep morale up in that dressing room, which he's kind of lost already, for being honest. So, yeah, for me, I think you definitely could have several Spurs players in the side just because of the season they've had. I went for a defender, and I went for Pedro Porro. But I can also see exactly why you went for Dragusin.
Yeah, Porro's a funny one. He's, I think in the right system he can be really, really good. And I think when Spurs were playing well, he was really shining in that system. I do agree that this season, I think just the tactics, I think he must be told to do these things, because I think he wouldn't be playing otherwise. And like you said, I think Spence would be playing if he wasn't following instructions from the manager. And I think he gets given a lot of freedom under Ange, which I think with the difficulties they've had in their defensive line, the changes to that back four, I just think Porro's sort of been that one constant that really sort of stands out, and where you've got 2 centre-backs who shouldn't be playing, Jed Spence playing on the wrong side and still performing well, and Porro just sticks out even more as that sort of crazy high-flying fullback that when they haven't needed that type of player, he's still there and doing exactly the same thing. And yeah, I agree. I think he has stood out as somebody who, when Spurs have been struggling, he hasn't really adapted his game to help out that much.
Yeah, I think he's absolutely perfect in a right wing back role in a back 3 system. I think he's absolutely perfect. But at right back, I'm just not convinced unless the whole team or the whole defense and the midfielders in front of him are set up to enable him to do that, which I don't necessarily think they are at Spurs. So I've jumped a little bit from centre back to right back, but I felt it was topical with the Spurs defence. Who is your other centre back then, Toby, alongside Dragusin?
Yeah, my other centre back again was somebody who hasn't particularly played too much, and I think that's probably why I've got them in this most disappointing 11. I think when he was signed, I thought this is a really good player they've got coming in, somebody who can play alongside another signing that they made in Max Kilman, and be a really decent centre-back duo. And my most disappointing centre-back alongside Dragusin is Todibo of West Ham. He's only had 16 starts in the league this season, and he has had a bit of an injury. But he's sort of been sharing that role with Mavropanos, which I think is a little bit disappointing. I thought when he was going to come in, he was going to be straight into the side with Kilman. I thought that was a really decent partnership. And West Ham just haven't got that defensive lineup right. They've conceded 58 goals in the league this season, which puts them in one of the worst defensive records in the league. And I think what we've heard about him when he was younger, how he was at Nice and at Barcelona, and how well he was going to perform, just hasn't really hit the ground running, and it's definitely not somebody I'm going to rule out if West Ham do sign him on a permanent. I think he's on loan at the moment. Then next season he could be somebody starting alongside Kilman playing well, but I just think based on my expectations just hasn't delivered at all really.
Completely fair. I absolutely agree with you. He was on my list as well as a potential option for disappointment of the season. I think before he made the move to West Ham, he was linked with the likes of Man United, and I thought to myself, yeah, he looks like he could be a decent fit for Man United. And now the fact that he's gone to West Ham and looked that bad, it's not been encouraging really. And it is one where you think to yourself, should West Ham even exercise the option based on how not well he's done so far this season? You wouldn't be surprised if they decided not to. I think they probably will, and I think you could probably get the best out of him. I don't think a player turns just bad overnight. I think there are multiple factors you need to take into account, but it is worrying that a player of his caliber, maybe it's not cut off for the Premier League, who knows, a lot of the really good players aren't. But yeah, I can absolutely see where you came from.
Yeah, so in terms of centre-backs, do you want to give us your centre-back partnership? Go for both of those?
Yes, I can do. Let me know your thoughts one by one. So at right centre back, I've gone for Manchester City's Ruben Dias. I could have gone for a Manchester City player further afield in terms of midfield or the attack, considering the narrative around them this season, how poor they've been. However, I think the Man City defence is a massive area of concern, and one where Ruben Dias, who when he first came into the league, he won the PFA Player of the Year in 2021 season. I think he should be doing better than he is at the moment. And for me, he has been a disappointment. When you think about the best centre-backs in the league, you automatically think of Liverpool and Arsenal, and you go Van Dijk, Konate, Saliba, Gabriel. We don't talk about Ruben Dias as much as we should do anymore. I think now he's in that rung just below them. And I think that is an issue that he himself needs to address and Man City need to think about, because yes, next season Man City are going to be a completely different beast. But this season, when the chips have been down, he's played maybe around 20 odd games so far this season in the league. He has not performed that well. Man City have been better with him in the side, but not necessarily perfect. And it's one where he's going to be 28 this month in May. So when you're thinking about the next evolution of Man City, yes, there are other defenders ahead of him which need to be replaced. But I think in terms of leadership, he's got that in abundance. But in terms of passing, you always talk about, John Stones is so pivotal in the Pep Guardiola defence, him stepping out into midfield. And you would hope that Ruben Dias would be fit alongside him. But now I look at the future of the Man City defence, and I think Gvardiol in the left centre-back role, potentially Kusanov is the future. Maybe Man City go ahead and buy another centre-back. I'm now not convinced that Ruben Dias is going to be the answer for him. And especially if he's going to be turning 28 this month and going into the summer, are you perhaps thinking about maybe you need to sell him on? I think that is absolutely mental compared to where we were when he first came to the league. PFA Player of the Year, looked like the outstanding centre-back in the league, and now we don't even talk about him as being one of the elite. I think the drop-off has been disappointing, and it's only really I've noticed it this season when I've been looking at Manchester City as a whole, and I'm going, the whole team's been disappointing. But where are the standout characters? I expect him to be that, and he hasn't been that for me.
Yeah, I definitely think a Man City defender is definitely justified. With Dias, I think like you said, he hasn't been bad this season. He's been, like you sort of saying, Robinson, I'd probably say like a 6 out of 10. I think he's had a lot of chop and change in the back line. And I think maybe I'd probably be more leaning towards somebody like Ake or Akanji, who I think have been quite poor at times. I don't think Dias, maybe he just hasn't had a bad game, and he just hasn't had really an excellent one either. And somebody like Gvardiol who has really stood out this season, makes Dias look a little bit worse. Yeah, I definitely think a Manchester City defender in there is a good shout. It'd be interesting to see, like you say, what that back line is going to look like next season, and how that importance of Ruben Dias, I definitely agree, I think has dropped off this season.
Yeah, I agree. But also, I'll just come back to you on the Kanji and Ake comments and just say, I don't expect them to be the standout leader in that defence and be starting week in, week out. Because Pep Guardiola rotates all of his defenders really, and they all get about 28, 29 starts in all competitions. I expect Ruben Dias to be starting 30 games a season, and I expect him to be the leader and arguably be one of the captains in that side. And for me, he just hasn't done that. And that's why, for me, the expectations of him were much higher, and he's fallen to the same level as everyone else. And so therefore that drop is bigger, therefore more disappointing for me. And then I come on to my left centre back, and I've gone for another heavy hitter of a club. I've gone for Chelsea's Levi Colwill. And people might be thinking to themselves, Mev, what are you on about? He started 31 games this season, 1 goal, 1 assist, being ever present in that Chelsea back line. And I would say yes, but to me that is the problem, because while he's been starting, I want him to nail down that left centre-back role for Chelsea. I want him to say, I am the first choice at centre-back. Chelsea, you need to go out and buy another centre-back to build a partner alongside me. And to me, he hasn't quite convinced me just yet. I think about him and Wesley Fofana, who's only played 14 matches this season. If Chelsea were to sign a new centre-back and then all the centre-backs were fit, I'd argue that it should be Fofana and someone else, not Colwill and someone else, and I think that's the issue. He looks really, really good on the ball, passing it out from the back. I think he's excellent, but when it comes to defending, is he going to be there in the trenches, defending everything, heading everything out, clearing the ball? Is he a defender's defender? Do you want him alongside you? I'm not necessarily sure, and this might be difficult to place because, like with Ruben Diaz, the whole defense as a whole as a unit has not been performing well. But I just don't think that, despite the fact that he started 31 games in the league this season, that he has cemented the left centre back role for me, and I really want him to. So maybe this is more hope than expectation, but my hope of what he could have done this season, he hasn't quite reached that for me. So I've gone for Ruben Diaz at right centre back and Levi Cole at left centre back. A little bit of a tasty centre back duo there.
Yeah, Colwill. I think since his loan spell at Brighton, where I was thinking this guy's the real deal when he was playing there at such a young age, and he really stood out. Like you said, amazing on the ball, fit that Brighton style of play so well, and I was really jealous that he was going back to Chelsea, to be honest. I thought they've got a real play on their hands there, and it just hasn't really worked out for him since. I think this season, in a way, I still probably think this season has been his best season under Chelsea. But I think with that expectation of what we saw when he was at Brighton, what we do still expect from him, it just, like you say, hasn't quite been enough. And I don't think he's got that fear factor of a defender, where when attackers are running or making play, they think, oh, this is going to be difficult because Colwill's there. I think he's more an asset, as you said, for Chelsea going forward, and still some things to work on in terms of his defensive play. And again, like I think we said with a few players like Todibo, for example, I think next season we could see that still there. It's still there, which I think is what makes these players so disappointing sometimes.
Yeah, completely agree. That's why I've got him in my team. And so that leaves only your right back for you, and you've got... I'm not sure who you've got at right back, I'll be honest, mate.
Yeah, right back, it's a similar case to Leif Davies, I think, with a promoted side, somebody who in a way expected to carry the team and really make a lot for their team to try and help them out. But this season, it's just been a big drop from last season, and that is Cole Walker-Peters. Such a pivotal player for Southampton last season in the way that they played. He was playing all over the pitch from right back. He would invert into midfield and dictate the play. We would see him overlap at times and produce some amazing crosses and assists. And statistically, last season in the Championship, and again, like Leif Davies, yes, it's the Championship. There is a drop in quality, and when these sides come up, they've got to sit back, blah, blah, blah. But the drop in terms of his stats has been absolutely massive again. Progressive passes, progressive carries, assists, expected assists, they've almost all halved since coming up to the Prem. And it's just been disappointing season as a whole for Southampton. Maybe not a load of expectation, but I think how poorly they have performed, to still be on that same points record as Derby at the moment on 11 points. I think nobody was expecting them to be that bad, and I think we expected their key players like Walker-Peters to be a lot better than they have. So that's why for me he's in my most disappointing 11.
Yeah, I can see why you've put him in your team, mate. I really had high hopes for him, especially at the start of the season when they were playing wing backs and a 3 at the back. I really thought he could get forward, get some goals and assists, but also be really solid defensively. It just hasn't quite worked out at all for Southampton or any of the newly promoted side. So, yeah, I don't really think there's anything more to say on that, but I think you've hit the nail on the head. Should we then go into midfield? This is where I have to make a confession, I'll be honest with you, mate. I have changed up the formation. It's not a typical 4-3-3. I've gone for a 4-4-2, old-fashioned.
Nice. Proper Brexit stuff.
Yeah, what have you got?
I've got 4-3-3, so I've got three flat midfielders, really.
Okay. Well, one of my wide, one of my wingers, you can probably say could play midfield as well, but I just think it suits better playing them on one of the wings. So should we start off with the midfielders who do, and for me, one can play midfield? And should we go with the deepest lying midfielder? Who have you got?
Yeah, so I have got as my deepest lying midfield. I've got Manchester United's Kobbie Mainoo. Again, like a few of these players, I don't think has had a bad quote unquote season. I just think the expectation of how he was performing last season, how well he was playing, and how he burst into that side and was absolutely incredible. And we were saying he should be starting for England, should be doing this, should be doing that, all of these incredible things. This season, it's just felt really flat. I think he's struggled under Amorim's system. I don't think Amorim particularly trusts him to play him as the two in midfield. We've seen him experiment with him playing a little bit further forward in one of the tens and even up front, I think, for one game this season. And it's just been annoying because he could be so good, and I can't quite see it happening now. And there's a lot less talk from United fans as well about how good he is, and I really hope Amorim can maybe get him into that team somehow and get him playing well under that system, because it'd be a real shame to see him be one of those sort of wonder kids and those next big things who just fizzles out. And that's what it's felt like for me a little bit this season with Kobbie.
Yeah, you could choose any Man United player, for being completely honest, mate. I think, oh, I don't know. I think Mainoo was potentially a little bit harsh, but I can absolutely see why you put him in your team. I do agree, though. I hope he can get himself into the Man United side, because when you think about it, they don't really have an identity or something you can relate to, especially with ticket prices rising. Think about moving homes from Old Trafford to a new stadium. They could really do with something that they could connect to on the pitch, and I think Mainoo is that. His goal against Lyon in the Europa League was absolutely fantastic. So he definitely has something. It's just how can he be utilised in the most effective way in this Amorim system? We'll have to wait and see, but I can see why you put him in the side. But for me, I think with the young players, sometimes, you've got to account for a little bit of variance, because they're still growing. Sometimes they'll have good seasons, sometimes they won't. And so I think that's all part of them growing. With me, with my deepest lying midfielder, I think you can say, I went for someone who's a little bit more older, someone who's 25, first season in the Premier League, but I expected a lot more bigger things from them. And that is Brighton and Hove Albion's Mats Vijver. Someone who, when he signed for Brighton, I was thinking, Brighton have got themselves an absolute coup here. He should be playing for one of the top sides in Europe, and I think a lot of sides could have done with it. But so far this season, he's only started 6 games and played 21 in total in the league, with only 692 minutes. In pre-season, I thought to myself, wow, him alongside Carlos Baleba, they could be destroying midfields and be dominating Premier League midfields this entire season, and it hasn't really quite worked out. I'm not quite sure why. I think he has looked a little bit poor. He has looked a little bit slow. I'm not sure if that's depending on the league is coming from the Eredivisie. But I think maybe it's going to take him a little bit more time to get used to the Premier League and the tempo of it. But I've already seen some fans of Brighton say, do you know what? Maybe we just cut a losses. I think there's still suitors in Europe, and it's only been one bad season. Maybe you can recoup your money. And I think from the expectation I have, I thought he was going to be an absolute game changer for Brighton. I thought he was that good a player, and I was thinking maybe I was hoping Liverpool could have signed him. I thought for Man United he could have done a good job. Teams like AC Milan and other teams in Europe, I thought he was absolutely the right fit, and at the prime age we could go on and just kick on and elevate the team to a new level. And maybe that's my fault for having maybe too much expectation on a player so soon, but I really thought that he could have done it, and I just haven't seen anything like the form he showed last season in the Eredivisie. So yeah, personally, he's been really disappointing. So he was one of the first names on my team sheet, actually.
Yeah, and this makes my next pick a lot easier because I've got him as well. I've got him in my midfield too. I don't really have too much more to say than you said. I think you summed that up fantastically. I think with Brighton, there's been quite a lot of problems with their midfield this year, and I think you could have almost picked a number of players from their midfield. I think O'Reilly could be somebody in there who maybe... He obviously had a few injuries and hasn't played too much either, but somebody who maybe we'd expect to see a little bit more from. Another name I even had floating around there, and one that I've been so impressed with this season at times, is Jorginho Rutter, who I really like on the ball. I just think maybe he hasn't been as good as expected, especially with his £40 million price tag. I think that he may have to bring a little bit more than he has. And somebody who's been playing in weird positions, sort of on the left, the right, up front, and somebody I'd actually really like to see play in midfield potentially is Rutter, almost like that Joelinton role. I could really see that. But yeah, a few players from Brighton who maybe haven't delivered, and I think it sounds crazy to even think as a whole potentially that maybe at times they have been a little bit disappointing, and we know how good they can be, and they're still having a good season. I think they're in ninth at the moment. But yeah, Weaver, I think, is probably the one who sticks out the most as being the most disappointing.
So if you've got Mainu and Viper in your midfield, I'll then go and say the other player in my midfield double pivot, which is Fabio Carvalho of Brentford. And again, this is one slightly similar to Pfeiffer, but a little bit more different in the fact that he hasn't got as many opportunities, I don't think. Only 19 matches played so far this season. 2 goals, 1 assist. He's still managed to get some attacking returns, but significantly less minutes, from 455 over the course of the season. But the reason why he has to be on there for me is because he's Brentford's 5th most expensive signing ever, £22.5 million, plus with an additional £5 million in add-ons. And he just hasn't got a look in. And honestly, based on his performance this season, he hasn't deserved to. I think he has a very difficult task of replacing Mikael Damsgaard in that starting 11, who's arguably in the Premier League team of the season this year. But I think even if you take Damsgaard aside, I still think there was still an opportunity for Carvalho to get more minutes in the side. But he just hasn't looked up to the pace. And when he left Liverpool, I thought to myself, okay, Brentford is the perfect club for him. He's excelled in the Championship, first initially with Fulham when they first got promoted, and then with Hull City last season on the second half of last year when he got loaned out there. He played really, really well. And so Brentford, I thought, was the ideal side for him, somewhere further down the table, but one that, still plays a really good style of football, got a fantastic manager in Thomas Frank, and a system at Brentford where they really developed their young players. But it just hasn't quite worked out yet. And I'm not ruling him out as a signing. I just expected him to play a much more significant part in Brentford's season and his performances to be better as well, which they really haven't been. So my midfield two is Matt Pfeiffer of Brighton and Fabio Carvalho of Brentford.
Yeah, it's a good shout, that one. It's not one that I even had on my radar, to be honest. I don't think I had a massive amount of expectation for him for Brentford, but I think obviously with yourself as a Liverpool fan, you know the quality that he can have, and he certainly hasn't delivered that this season. And yeah, a really key point you made there is definitely Damsgaard. Very, very similar players, and I think the positions that they like to play, sort of drifting in that left-hand half space. Yeah, and I'm not sure if he's really going to be getting a sniff at any time soon either, with Damsgaard still keeping it up, similar age profile as well. Getting them both into the team, I think, is going to be mission impossible, and it could go down as not a poor signing for Brentford, but one that they may sort of cash in on and just move on, because, yeah, it hasn't really worked out for both, has it?
No, it really hasn't. So, Mainu and Viper in your midfield, who is the last player to complete it for you?
Yeah, this is a player who I think is probably one of my favourite players, and probably somebody who I still think is one of the best players in the league. And that's why I think I had to put him in this side, because my expectations of him are so high. And that is the Arsenal captain, Martin Odegaard. The last 2 seasons for me, he has been probably top 10 players in the league. For me, Arsenal's most important player in the last 2 seasons. And this season, he just hasn't been that. I think since his injury and him coming back, he has been really poor. And it's been really disheartening to see, because the amount of times over the last few years when we've seen him pick up that ball in their right-hand half space, thread it through into Saka, thread it through into the overlapping fullback, pull out these amazing flicks and tricks and through balls, and be that metronome for Arsenal so high up on the pitch. And this season, he's started dropping a lot deeper. He's not anywhere near as effective. I was going to say he's not taking as many risks, but he's taking risks at the wrong time and giving the ball away in really dangerous positions. And his numbers have really dropped as well. Last season, 18 goals and assists. This season, only 8. And even the season before that, he had 22. So it's season on season decline for the last 2 years in a row now. And again, he still has so much quality, and on his day, he can still be one of the best players in the league. I just think overall as a whole this season, with my expectations of him, he has unfortunately fallen a little bit flat, especially this second half of the season.
If you go back and actually watch my match reaction to the PSG game from Tuesday, I actually did say, do you know what? I think Martin Odegaard was hiding in some times. And during the game, I thought to myself that he would pass the ball out to Saka, and then what you want from him is either to drop deep and make himself an option if Saka is unable, to take on his man. But he didn't do that. Or in that case, fine. You want him to make a run past the back line to try and make himself available for a pass further ahead. He didn't do that. He just kind of stood there and just kind of stood there marked. And a couple of times that was really infuriating to me because a player of his intelligence should be able to know that I need to find space, I need to make myself an option. And he just wasn't doing it. And that's so on Martin Odegaard like that. It stood out so obviously to me. And I do think to myself that he presses defensively really, really well. Defensively, if you are going to replace him in the future, you need to look at someone who's going to create what he does defensively and then also then add a more attacking output. So I don't think it's necessarily just so easy just to replace him, but I do think there are serious questions that Arsenal potentially need to be asking about him. I would like to see them, obviously sign a striker and other players first, and then put the emphasis on him. But you could even make a point that Ethan Wanera should maybe be starting at the moment. And will he? No, I don't think Arteta will do that. But there are questions about Martin Odegaard, and I didn't want to put him there because of his injury, because he's been rushed back, because he plays so many minutes, and because there are injuries elsewhere on the side. I'm not quite sure if it's him or if it's the team at the moment. But I think come next season there'll be no place for him to hide. So I can absolutely see why you put him in that team. A bit like I think with me with Robertson.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, with Nwaneri, we're definitely nowhere near being in a position of starting Nwaneri over him in, say, big games, for example. But with that PSG game the other night, I think Nwaneri should have come on a lot earlier. Should have come on in sort of the 55th, 60th minute, given him a real good chance. And Odegaard doesn't have that pressure of being replaced by somebody because our bench at the moment is so poor that I really don't think that's pushing him in the right direction either. And I think we do have that one player who could do that, and that is Nwaneri. Should have come on. Looked a lot brighter in the 3 minutes that he played. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I definitely don't hope we replace him anytime soon. But yeah, maybe just for the rest of the season, I don't think things are looking too bright.
Yeah, well, I was going to go somewhere else with my next player, but since you brought up Arsenal, I will then go for my left winger, and I'm going to say Raheem Sterling. And you might be a bit surprised by that, maybe, I don't know, but I had low expectations of Raheem Sterling going into this season, and the fact that he's managed to disappoint me despite that low bar just shows how bad, in my opinion, he's been so far this season. So obviously he signed on deadline day in the summer, just expected to be a backup and a rotation option. But the fact that he can't even fill that squad role just shows to me what a really bad season he had. And the game that really highlighted it for me was that Leicester City away in the league. So that was on the back of realising Havertz was going to be out for the season, Gabriel Jesus picking up an ACL, Bukayo Saka was still injured, and the front three in that game, I think, were Sterling on the left, Trossard up front, and Waneri on the right. And the fact that Waneri looked like the best player on the pitch, I mean, first of all, credit to him because he's a phenomenal talent, but the fact that Sterling wasn't able to grab the ball by its neck and take control of that game, I think was incredibly damning. And then the fact that Trossard goes out to left wing, and then Marina comes on up top, and then that's the front line you go with, and then Sterling isn't able to get back even in the side, just as a substitute to try and rest one of them, even when all the injuries, I think was incredibly damning of him, Arsenal's signing of him, and potentially where Sterling is going to be in the future, because he cannot go back to Chelsea. Chelsea won't want him. He definitely won't be going to Arsenal, hasn't impressed. But is any Premier League team going to be looking at Raheem Sterling on the wages that he's on? No. So, had a low bar initially, and he has fallen well short of that. So for me, I think that the fact that I don't want to be too harsh on him because he has been a fantastic player, but I just think that it's so disappointing because I had no expectations really at the start of the season. So yeah, I had to have him in my side.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people will be saying, "Oh, disappointing, Raheem Sterling. He's been rubbish for years." He still has these moments. It maybe be in every 1 or 2 games where he'll have a 10-second run where you think that is pure quality there. You can still see it, but he just does not do it anywhere near enough. It's like I said, every 2 games he'll have 10 seconds where he plays well, and the rest he'll look really slow, really sluggish. He's a poor presser. His whole attitude has just completely dropped, and it's really disappointing to see because when he was at his best, he was an exceptional player, and he still should have a lot in him at the moment. And like you said, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen next season. None of the top 10 sides in the Prem are going to sign him because he hasn't impressed enough, and I don't think any of the bottom 10 in the league would be able to offer him a wage that would potentially lure him in because he's on such huge money. He's going to have to take a 3-4 times pay cut to go potentially anywhere that's going to sign him. So it's certainly one to keep an eye on in the summer, but no idea what's going to happen. Like you said, it's been disappointing despite the expectations potentially being low.
I think he's either going to have to just stay at Chelsea and just refuse to move if he wants to get paid the wages that he's getting paid at the moment, or either the only three of his options I see at the moment are MLS, Saudi, or the Turkish Super League. I don't see anyone else covering the wages, the transfer fee, and giving him the playtime that he wants, all three. Yeah, I think that's probably it for Sterling at the elite level, but he still had a phenomenal career at his age. So, front three for you and my right midfield and strikers. Do you want me to go for my right midfield first, just to get my kind of midfield out the way?
Yeah, sounds good, mate. Let's
okay. So I've gone for, at my right wing, West Ham's Mohamed Kudus. Weird one because he's 24 now. And when you look at his highlight package or some of the things that he does on the football pitch on a very brief basis, you look at him and you go, this guy has absolutely everything. He could be Liverpool's replacement for Mohamed Salah. United could sign him and, they should mold their attack around him. He could be not only the perfect backup for Saka at Arsenal, but he could also be one competing with him. But if we're being honest, he's been so disappointing this season so far. He's still got 4 goals and 2 assists, but even that, he's underperformed his expected goals and his expected assists this season. And when you look at him physically and you look at him in the eye and the way he plays, he has all the raw attributes and more, and is probably a better player physically than someone like Jarrod Bowen. However, the reason why he isn't a better player than someone like Jarrod Bowen is because he doesn't have the work rate and the mentality, and that is incredibly damning. And you could probably sum it up all in one moment is when he got a sent-off against Spurs earlier in the season. He ended up punching one of the Spurs players that was typically a red card, 3-game ban, that got extended because of how bad the situation was. And I think he let not only himself down, but his teammates down as well in that moment, especially at that time because they were still under Lopetegui. The team itself was struggling. He really let them down bad. And it's one where he's got an £80 million release clause in his contract. He should be performing, getting 20 plus goals and assists in the season, and he should be vying for a move elsewhere, but he's not. Every time anyone looks at a West Ham player, they link with like to Jarrod Bowen, who doesn't want to move, but they link with him because Kudus isn't delivering and doing the business. So I've been quite thoroughly disappointed with him this season.
Yeah, I mean, last summer we were seeing rumours of him for Arsenal, for United, for Liverpool, and rightly so, because last season he looked absolutely exceptional. And this season with West Ham, it feels like you could pick almost any of their players besides maybe Bowen, Kilman and Wan-Bissaka. I think all of the rest have been so disappointing. So many of their signings as well, in Somerville and Tadibo, as I mentioned. And then, going forward, Paqueta, Kudus, these sorts of players who you expect to really carry West Ham and to be West Ham's best players. And Kudus himself, he could be one of the best wingers in the league when he's at his best, but he's been far from it this season. And I think he needs a big bounce back next season if he wants to get this sort of move to one of the elite clubs in Europe. Like you said, he's got to be playing a lot better than he has this season.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. So, who are we going to go for first in your front three?
Yeah, I'll go for my right wing as well, and feels like a bit of an easy target, this one. Feels like somebody that everybody has already said this season, but unfortunately, because of how good he was last year, he does have to go into my team, and that is Phil Foden of Manchester City. The drop-off has been so surprising, I think, is the key one. With some players, we know that they can be a bit hit and miss, and that they'll have a 20-goal season once and then a 9 or 10-goal season the next. But Phil Foden is somebody who is so good, so technically gifted, that we just expect him to be one of the best players in the world. And he was last season. He was the best player in the league last season. And now he's not even getting in Pep's side. He's dropped off from 19 goals and 8 assists down to 7 goals and 2 assists. And he's dropped from almost 32 90s in total down to below 19. A huge drop off for somebody who should be the main man in that Manchester City side now. And I think the way that he's been playing this season has been how he plays for England, where he takes a backseat role. He doesn't really want to work with the players around him as much. He doesn't have that confidence. He's not taking shots from anywhere. He's not trying to pull the strings and pull off these amazing, beautiful touches and passes. And he's become a bit of a passenger in that Manchester City side this season. And the way that he has been playing at times, where I think if you take away, he had that decent spell at the start of this calendar year where he got I think he got a hat-trick against Ipswich, and I think he may have got 1 or 2 goals in the game after. If you take that away, the stats are so shocking, and quite frankly, it's no surprise that Pep is sort of playing Doku or Savinho or Marmoush over Foden at the moment, because he has been so disappointing.
He's arguably been the most disappointing player this season. I think he definitely has to be in one of our teams. I mean, he was in consideration for mine, but I was struggling with the defence, so I decided to go for a Man City defender instead. But I think, I think last season was almost perfect. If you were like the sporting director of Manchester City, you're going, it's great. Kevin De Bruyne hasn't quite hit the heights. Phil Foden is emerging as PFA Player of the Year, and now it's going to be a perfect passing of the baton. And then this season, it's just not happened. Neither of them have performed, and you can't really blame De Bruyne because of his age and his injury issues. Then Foden not doing it as well. I wonder if there is a little bit of hangover with his time at the Euros with England, where his lack of confidence has just dropped massively, because he certainly looks like he's been playing like that. And I think Foden, I kind of lump him in a little bit with Marcus Rashford in the fact that I don't think these young exciting players coming through now, well, not even coming through, established young players now, they're not really the ones who are going to take the game by the scruff of the neck. They're not really going to drag a side who aren't performing well and take them across the line to a win or a trophy. I think they're the players who, when the team's playing well, they will play well and they will maybe produce a moment of magic or get you the goal or assist. But when the team isn't performing well, they don't do anything for you. And I think we look arguably the greatest, one of the best strikers in Premier League history, Didier Drogba. Didn't have the best goal tally, but he produced in big games and moments when the side needed him. And I wonder if these players are just mentally not quite the same anymore. I mean, that's probably a whole topic in itself, but I just don't think that Phil Foden, you can build your team around him if you're Pep Guardiola going into the summer. And you probably look at him going, yeah, we're not going to sell him. We're going to keep him around, but we're not. He should be the face of Man City, but he's not going to be, I don't think, which is a bit of an issue.
Yeah, and it's felt like the journey that Foden's been on, this was not meant to happen. It sounds like so weird, but he's built it up so gradually over the seasons. And last season was that season where I think people finally said, okay, this guy is the best player in the league. It's taken him 4 or 5 years to get there, and his game time is slowly going up. And now this big drop, like you said with somebody like Marcus Rashford, where we did see that drop at United, and it's taken him a while to get back there. Hopefully that doesn't happen with Foden, because he's an exceptional player and he's so good to watch, and that next season he can bounce back, but he's certainly going to have to regain the trust of his manager to even get the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, agreed. And so I've got my front 2 now. And I'm going to go with 1, just because we kind of touched on him before in a previous podcast, Eddie Nketiah at Crystal Palace, who's one of my front 2. And we talked about him in that episode when ranking every Premier League club's most expensive transfer this season. So I don't want to go into it too much again, because he ranked quite low because of the fact that the Crystal Palace spent all the money on him, a deal potentially worth up to £30 million. He hasn't delivered so far this season, only 3 goals in all competitions. And I just think he hasn't quite fulfilled the role of being the backup to Mateta when he's not been in the side, kind of rotating in and out, playing alongside him. It hasn't quite worked out the way he wanted it to. And I think in the last couple of weeks, I've maybe seen a little bit more from him to maybe indicate that he does have a future at Palace, but he is still a little bit far away from getting himself into that first team. So I think Eddie Nketiah, considering the money the Crystal Palace spent on him, the fact that I thought that he would at least get double-digit goals this season, I think for me, he has to be in my side, and he's one of my strikers up front.
Yeah, and you'll be glad to hear, Mev, he is also one of mine. Feels like a bit of an easy target at this point, as a second video in the last few weeks. But yeah, it's just a strange signing. He doesn't fit the system at all, really. He's absolutely nothing like Mateta, which I guess in a way can be useful for a squad to have. But I think with the way that Glasner plays, and he's quite fixed in his system, Nketiah's never really going to get a sniff. And I don't really know why they signed him, to be honest. He just doesn't fit at all. He needs to find a club where they want somebody who can be that sort of poacher, somebody who can just almost sit in the box and have wingers cross it in or play it in. That's where he really thrives, and he's not the sort of player that's going to hold the ball up like Mateta does, sort of on the counter-attack. So yeah, it's less to do with him. It's more to do with the signing itself. It's just been so disappointing because it just hasn't worked out for either party at all.
I can't wait for him to put in a man-of-match performance and score a hat-trick against Man City in the cup final now. It's just written in the stars, and this is going to age like fine milk, isn't it? Okay.
I mean, I want Nketiah to do badly so well, because he never really got the opportunity at Arsenal, and it was one of those players you could see that he's got a lot more to give. But yeah, let's hope. That would be unbelievable if he did that now. I'd happily be awfully wrong if so.
I wouldn't. Right. In that case, who have you got at left wing then, mate? Your last player.
Yeah, my final player at left wing is... But I was going to say shoehorned out to left wing, but he's not really. He kind of plays anywhere. He plays as a 10, he plays as a second striker, he plays as a left winger. But quite frankly, this season he doesn't really play, and it's Christopher Nkunku. The drop off from Leipzig has been insane. Last season, obviously hit by that really bad injury that essentially ruled him out for most of the season. But when Chelsea signed him, again, it was like I've mentioned, I seem to mention it with a few players, that I was a bit jealous that Chelsea had signed him and got a player of this quality, that the way he carries the ball, the way he drives forward, the way he finishes so clinically. How he has played at Chelsea, or how little he's played at Chelsea, I just think has been so disappointing. Doesn't really fit into the side, I think, with Cole Palmer playing. Isn't really a winger, and he does need to play almost as that second striker where Palmer is playing. So hasn't really been given the game time. Hasn't really actually stepped up either as well when he's been given that opportunity. And potentially like Nketiah, I think this is a case where Nkunku will just need to move on, find a club where he can thrive and be a bit more of the main man again. And I just don't think it's ever really going to work out at Chelsea, unfortunately.
Yes, I see that as well. I had him as one of my considerations, not just in Nkunku, but I had Jadon Sancho also in there as like a maybe for this team. I can see why you put in Nkunku, because he has had the opportunity with Nicholas Jackson getting injured. That seemed like the perfect opportunity for a run of games as well, not just in cameo appearances. He's done okay in the Conference League, but Chelsea have just dominated that so far, so I'm not really going to put too much weight into that. And I can see why you've got him in the side. I just think maybe a move back to Germany, I think, suits all parties quite well. So yeah, that is your side done, and it's quite a good disappointing 11. But you cannot have a disappointing 11 unless you're going to include a Man United forward. And I have gone for Rasmus Højlund up front, who, a little bit similarly to when I talked about, I think, Pedro Porro in some vein, in the fact that I think he's not properly helped by the system, but I think there's two parts to Højlund. I think firstly, there's him. I don't think he's getting into the right scoring positions. I don't think when he gets into those positions, he's taking his chances. And I think that he has been poor, and I think more than anything else, his confidence has taken a massive hit. But I also think that the team as a whole isn't really functioning to get the best out of him. He only averages 1.64 shots per 90 minutes, and that is in the bottom 5% of strikers in Europe. So he's not getting as many shots as you like. I mean, the ideal statistic is that your striker gets about 4 shots per game, and he's just not getting that service whatsoever. And not only that, I just don't think he's being passed to. I look at someone like Alejandro Garnacho, who is the consideration for the side as well for me, because of the fact that he's got one of the lowest shot-to-goal conversion rates in Europe this season. And that's because anytime he gets the ball, he's constantly looking to shoot. But then he takes the ball so far wide, the shooting from ridiculous angles, whereas he'd be better off trying to pass the ball to Højlund, but he just never seems to be looking for him. So I think that combination as a duo isn't really working. And not only that, with Man United being so bad this season, I think Bruno Fernandes has been a linchpin in their side, and so they kind of just gone, do you know what? Fernandes is our best player. He's the one who's going to orchestrate everything. Just get him the ball as much as possible rather than Højlund, who is the number 9 in the striker. And you can understand it considering how bad United have been this season. So I think it is Højlund, but I also think it's the team itself. And if Højlund were to go back to Italy or play for another side, I can see him doing well. I just think for this season, considering it's the second season where last year he got 10 goals and 2 assists in the league, to this season where he's only got 4 goals and no assists, he's regressing. Yes, the team is regressing as well. It hasn't been helped by the new manager coming in midway through a season and then been more focused on possession rather than end-to-end attacking football, which maybe would have led to him getting more chances. But I just think that you have to say that he has been disappointed despite the mitigating factors.
Yeah, Højlund has been. I think his price tag and the way that he came in has done him absolutely no good. I mean, 65 million for a player. I can't remember how many goals he had scored before they signed him, but he barely played even any professional football for the price tag that they had. And he's just not the right sort of player for United. And like you said, I think at another club, you can see he does have that in him to perform really well and score goals. He's just not the sort of forward that United need at the moment in the position that they're in. They need somebody who's going to be absolutely demanding that ball, driving the ball forward and being that focal point to take some of that play away from Fernandes. And Højlund just isn't quite that player. And it just doesn't really seem to... And neither is Xerxes. Somebody like Xerxes, who I think still has moments and still holds the ball really well, is technically really, really good and a really intelligent player, but is not that absolute bagsman, that really clinical finisher, and that's somebody who's going to pick the ball up, run from one end to the other and score. And that's the sort of player I think United need. And both of those strikers, I think, probably have been disappointing, but I think a lot of that isn't really actually down to them. And I think if they were in different teams, they would be performing a little bit better.
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see if they're at the club next season, and if they are, how they play, if they play, to quote one Jose Mourinho. So there we have it. Those are our disappointing 11s. Toby, do you want to run me through your team once?
Yeah, so in goal I have got Emi Martinez, right back Kyle Walker-Peters. My centre-back partnership is Todibo and Dragosan. Left back is Leif Davies. And I've got a midfield 3 of Kobbie Mainoo, Martin Odegaard and Weaver. Front 3 of Nkunku, Nketiah, and right wing is Phil Foden.
And for my team, I have got also Emi Martinez in goal, Pedro Porro at right back, Ruben Diaz at right centre back, with Levi Colwill at left centre back and Andy Robertson at left back. A 4-4-2, so at right midfield I've got Mohamed Kudus, right centre midfield I've got Mats Pfeiffer at Brighton, at left centre midfield Fabio Carvalho at Brentford, and left wing I've got Raheem Sterling, and up top I've got Eddie Nketiah at Crystal Palace and Rasmus Højlund of Manchester United. So those are our teams. Let us know in the comments below who you think we should have put in the side, if you agree or disagree. And with that, let's move on to the quiz.
Yeah, the final round of Squad Guesser, round number 10. Things are all square at the moment, 63 points each. So it will come down to this final round, final decider of Squad Guesser to see who takes home the quiz trophy for this little spell. So again, I can't remember who went first last time, so I'm going to ask you, Mev, do you want to go first or second, or do you remember?
I remember it had been a while, so I let you go first. But this week I would like to go first, please, and put some pressure on.
Okay, nice. Right, so I am going to randomly throw you your first player in your starting 11.
Mate, what team is it? What formation is it?
I was just going to get into it, man. I was just about to say,
Okay.
you're too excited. You're too keen.
Always forget. Go
So
on.
it is a club game, and it is a 4-2-3-1.
Okay.
And your
I'm
first
ready.
player is the right midfielder, who is English.
Okay, English right midfielder. That's not enough to go on, but it's probably an English side. Can I please spin again, mate?
Yes, of course. So your next player is number 9, which is it's number 9, but it's the number 10 on my sheet. So the central attacking midfielder is Brazilian.
Okay, Brazilian cam, English right winger. Could be Liverpool with Coutinho and Sterling. Could be... I'm going to need a bit more help here. Can I spin again, please, mate?
Of course. So you now have your right back, who is also English.
English right back, English right wing. Gary Neville. Hang on. So you've got Neville, you've got Richards, you've got Walker, you've got Trippier, you've got Trent, you've got Reece James. If Reece James is a right wing, I don't really. Trippier, English. Could we chose? No, I'm going to spin again, please, mate.
Yeah, another spin, and it is one of your defensive midfielders, and they are German.
German. Is it Chelsea? Ballack? Oh, I don't know. Is this Arsenal? I don't have a right. I don't know. I'm going to spin again.
Yep, another spin. That's completely fine. So you now have your striker, and it's another Englishman, the third so far.
Another Englishman. Right wing English. Striker English. Brazilian cam German. German midfielders. Gundogan. Ballack. Emre Can? Coutinho. Trent or Nathaniel Klein, the right wing. I don't know. Spin again, please, mate.
He's gone for another spin, and it is your left winger, and it's another Brazilian for you.
Mate, I don't know. Is this? I'm thinking of something. Maybe it is Liverpool. No. Maybe it is Liverpool, right? And maybe it's Firmino in the cam, Coutinho left wing. Maybe it's Sturridge up front. Maybe it's Milner right wing. Maybe it's Klein right back. And it's Chan defensive midfield. Okay. I'm going to guess, and I'm going to say that it is the Liverpool team in 15-16, which lost the Europa League final to Sevilla 3-1.
Absolutely smashed it, mate. Yes, exactly that. That is exactly what it is. And
okay,
you basically got every single player right as well, as you were reading them out. Apart from, it was actually Adam Lallana at right midfield.
okay.
And it was, Danny Sturridge up front. So, yeah, you did very well to pick out the rest of those players. That gets you 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 points. So is that 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6? 6 points, yeah. The other players who would have been in there were Mignolet, Croatian and Ivorian in Lovren and Torre. Alberto Moreno was left back, and Milner was one of the other midfielders. So, yeah, very respectable 6 points. Did well.
Thank
it was
you,
a fairly niche one, I think, as well, for a big game.
Yeah, I think also because Liverpool lost the final, so it doesn't really stick in your memory as well. Compared to when you win. So yeah. So how many points then do you need to win?
So if it's 6, we draw. If it's less, we're on the same. Yeah. So I've just got to match you or better than you. Otherwise, you take the dub.
Okay, so I've drawn the numbers ahead of time, and I'm not feeling too confident that I'm going to win. I think you might get it.
Ooh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, so you've got a club side, and they're playing a 4-2-3-1.
Mm-hmm.
And your first player is the right midfielder, who is Spanish.
Spanish right midfielder. Okay. I'm instantly thinking David Silva is my first player. I'm also thinking it could be somebody like Jose Antonio Reyes. It could be a Barcelona, potentially like a Ferran Torres or an Iniesta out there for some reason. David Silva is my strongest thought for that. But I am going to spin again, please.
Okay. Your left centre midfielder is French.
French. Okay. So if it was Manchester City, who would be a French midfielder in there? I can't quite think of one. Other French midfielders. I was going to say Kante and Jose Perez, but I think Perez joined after Kante had already left. Could be Kante and Pedro, possibly. That could be a little combo. But let's spin again. Still too many options.
And this is where I'm not quite sure. So your right back is Ecuadorian.
Ecuadorian. Surely that has got to be Antonio Valencia. Surely. So who is the French midfielder in that case? If it's Valencia. And who is the Spanish right midfielder? Oh, it could be Juan Mata. Could be Juan Mata at right mid. Antonio Valencia right back. And who would be the French midfielder? Schneiderlin, possibly? Could this be the Man United side who won the Europa League? But I can't remember the year that they won it. I'm going to spin once. Oh, wait, how many? No, I might as well guess. 11, 10, 9. Oh, I could guess on an 8, 7 and a 6. I'm going to guess. Oh, what year did they win the Europa League? Man United. It was under Mourinho, wasn't it? Was it 2017 or 2018? I'm going to guess the Man United side that won the 2018 Europa League.
Do you have a score for me, mate?
They beat Ajax. 1-0.
What year did you say?
I said 2018.
So I'm not sure, right? Because it's the right team, with the right opposition. It's the wrong year and the wrong score.
Don't give it.
Okay, I won't give it to you. And then, so you're on to 8 points. So you've still got 2 more guesses to win it. So your next player is the left midfielder, who's Armenian.
Okay. Could it be 2017?
Just working your way through the years.
It's got a bit around then. I don't think it could be 2015. No, and Liverpool's obviously 2016. It's got to be 2017. So let's go Man United, Europa League winners, 2017. I want to go 2-0 or 2-1. Let's go 2-1.
So it's the right team, it's the right opposition, it's the right year, and I'm going to give it to you now because you're going to get it. It was Man United 2, Ajax 0. So
I was between 2-0 and 2-1, so yeah, I would have got it on the next one. Yeah.
Either way, you've won, so you can have it.
Oh, we'll take it. We'll take the dub for the season of quiz for the 10 rounds. I'm not even joking. I was literally about to do this exact same team for you, but then I realised, Liverpool won it the year before, so I'll give you the Liverpool one instead. So,
I didn't. We didn't win it. We lost it.
Oh, lost it. Sorry. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Just to rub it in. But yeah, I didn't look at the Man United side, but I was just about to do it. So I'm glad that was a good one.
It was a very weird bunch because you had Romero in goal, you had Valencia, Smalling, Blind, and Darmian as the back four. Your midfield three was Herrera, Pogba, was the French midfielder you're going to get, and Fellaini. And your front three was Mata, Rashford, and Mkhitaryan. But when I did the random list generator, the fact that you got Ecuadorian and then also you got Armenian for Valencia and Mkhitaryan, I was just like, give me a chance, will you? But I have to do it fair. I have to do it fair. I could have gone like Spanish right winger, French midfielder, another Spanish midfielder, Belgium, and then you would have like been all over the place. But no, well played, fair and square. You won it, so I can't hold any grudges.
Yeah, that is the Ecuador and the Armenia. Because to be honest, if you would have given me striker and it was English, I was convinced as we were sort of doing this that it was going to be Zlatan up front. I could have sworn he was the striker that season. I think if I would have got the striker in any of those, I don't think I would have guessed United.
Yeah, well, I think Zlatan was at the club, but he probably got injured because he's out for a long time, wasn't he? He started the season on fire, but yeah, well, very well done, mate. You won the quiz, and yeah, nothing else to say really, apart from me just to cry. But congrats, and thank you everyone for watching. Let us know again about your disappointed 11. Whose do you agree with most? Who do you like the most? Is there anyone you think we missed out on? Anyone you would have included yourselves? Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next week.